now for Uncancelled. And this is where Britain's top commentators speak out on controversial issues without the fear of the cancel culture sweeping the rest of the media. Now, it's been another day from hell for Liz Truss, with Home Secretary Suella Braverman's bombshell resignation followed by a shambolic fracking vote which saw disputed claims of MPs reportedly being bullied and manhandled into voting the government's way. The political chaos began, of course, with the catastrophic mini-budget U-turn earlier this week and the installation of globalist lockdown lover Jeremy Hunt as Chancellor. As my next guest, Spiked editor Tom Slater writes, who elected PM Hunt? In just a few days, he has fundamentally altered the UK's economic course, taking his lead not from voters but from markets and meddlesome bodies like the IMF. What's weirder still is that Truss, with her authority completely drained from her and without even the pretense of political principle left, essentially invited him in to stage this hostile takeover of her own government. And Tom Slater, since you wrote that piece, the Ramona coup continues, of course, because Braverman is out on some sort of minor indiscretion, replaced by Grant Shapps. How is this happening, Tom, in one of the world's greatest democracies?
I think it should alarm anyone who cares about democracy. It doesn't matter how you care about this government, doesn't matter what you think about the Tory party. We shouldn't be in a situation in which Jeremy Hunt, a man who precisely no one voted for to be Prime Minister, is running the country. And as you say, as we saw today, this sort of coup has deepened. You've got Grant Shapps, who's been given this particular position, a Rishi Sunak backer, someone who Liz Truss sacked a few weeks ago from his previous cabinet position, has been given one of the great offices of state. And I thought it was interesting that when he was speaking to the news cameras in Westminster, he thanked Jeremy Hunt, didn't even mention Liz Truss. Jeremy Hunt is essentially currently in control. And what I think we're witnessing is like a weird replay of what happened in places like Italy and Greece in the debt crisis. We just have a kind of technocratic government impose itself. Yes, it's filling a vacuum left by Liz Truss and her shredded authority and all the rest of it. But we can't let the situation go on. We really need to, I think, have a general election just to bring this back in line with what voters want.
Yeah, because, Tom, as Nigel Farage said to me earlier in the evening, how the hell do we know who Hunt is being advised by? Is it the IMF, who you mentioned in your piece? Farage suggested, could it be the White House? I mean, this is so anti-democratic, right?
Completely. It's the reassertion of technocracy. It's the sort of revenge of the old orthodoxies and things like this. I mean, the reason Jeremy Hunt is in that position is because he'll do what he's told by the elite consensus, by the markets, by bodies like the IMF, which have decided that the government has strayed too far in one direction and basically needs to be brought to heel. And this is one of the things that was so positive about Brexit, and we're at risk of really losing in the midst of this Remainer coup, is that we broke out of that old kind of there is no alternative sort of politics where there could be a bit more experimentation. Now you see that old orthodoxy just reinforced once again, which is why it's not just about Jeremy Hunt, it's about what he represents, which I think is so damning and something that we really need to take head on.
Well, of course. And, Tom, there's also his authoritarian tendencies, which no one in the MSM points out. He's presented as some sort of almost quite beige figure, as if he's a safe pair of hands. And I actually think Hunt proved during the COVID crisis he's actually an extremist. Tom, he wanted to follow the Chinese-style zero COVID policy where Brits who would test positive for COVID would be locked up in a government facility away from their homes. Plus, when it comes to Brexit, he wanted a second referendum, which would mean overturning the biggest democratic mandate in our history. How is he presented by the MSM as some sort of safe pair of hands? To me, they are extremist policies, and he should be called out as the extremist that he is.
Definitely. And I think Jeremy Hunt is a good example of how a man who kind of believes in nothing is quite a dangerous thing, because he has taken very outrageous positions, but he also is just willing to kind of go whichever way the wind blows. He's very given to whatever the experts are telling him at any one point. But as we learned during Brexit and the pandemic, the experts can be very wrong. I think he's a good example of how an empty suit, as it were, a kind of technocratic politician who claims just to be someone who's sensible, knows how to manage things, can easily be captured by some of the most authoritarian and dangerous ideologies out there. And I think lockdown is definitely the one that we really should hang around his neck, given the kind of positions that he has taken on that particular issue.